Hey guys, welcome back to Heiko's Garage.
Yeah.
I am almost done with working on bicycles, but I want to take a break from that and work on airheads. You guys seem to like the airhead content better than the bicycle content. I don't know how I know that, but yeah. Anyways, R90/6, the last thing we did was the headlight upgrade. That's still working great. But since I am messing with electrical things, I want to ultimately at some point add some heated grips to this bike because I really want to tour ride this, and freezing fingers is like the worst thing. I can do pretty much something about the rest of my body, put more layers on and all that stuff, but the fingers always get cold. Heated grips would be great, but the bikes are known for having a pretty weak charging system. Even at idle, the alternator really doesn't put out any charging voltage, and if you idle too long, you will overheat your bike, your engine, but also run your battery down. And therefore, today I want to increase the alternator output and install a higher, not the highest output alternator upgrade kit, but a higher. And I will explain why I picked the model that I picked, because there are many different versions that you can buy and many fancier versions. I actually decided to stick with a Bosch style brushed alternator, and the reason I will explain later. This is not meant to be a how-to video. I will, however, show every step of the way, but I'm not an expert, blah, 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 blah. I was not in BMW factory school in 1974, so take everything that I say with a grain of salt. I will just take you guys along, chit-chat about it a little bit, my reasoning why I again put a brushed alternator in there and not one of those fancy permanent magnet alternators. But yeah, I already started just the typical things. I took the tank off. My bench seat also comes off. I did this hingeless modification a while back. I have a video about that if you want to see that. So seat is off, tank is off, and the battery is disconnected. Those are the three, you kind of have to. I could take the front wheel out, but that's not really going to give us more space. But yeah, at least we have the electrical stuff disconnected from shorting out anything and causing any damage. So let's get a little closer in here and let's take a look. Behind that silver cover is where the alternator lives, so we ultimately have to get behind that. Like I said, I already took the tank off and my bench seat, and then I disconnected everything from the negative post of my battery, so there's no juice going to the bike anymore. And yeah, so now we just need to focus on that cover there in the front, the engine cover, that needs to come off. And of course, the horn is going to be in the way, so we'll take that off here quick and then see what we can see. So, got you guys in place. Let's take the cover off. I have a motorcycle lift, but that's occupied, different bike. So we're gonna work on the ground here, no big deal. All right, let's see. Immediately grab the right size Allen key. I have stainless steel hardware in here. I actually should probably first take the horn off. That's kind of the hardest part to get to. I also want to do a horn upgrade. Requires a little bit of wiring and a relay. I want to put the dual tone horn that other BMW Airhead models had on here. I want to wire it properly so the horn switch will really only activate a relay, and then the relay will power the two horns. This thing is this one here is so wimpy. So there's just one bolt holding this on. I was kind of contemplating if I should take this whole project a little further and maybe take the timing cover off and look at the timing chain. But that sounds more like a winter project. And the bike runs fine. So what's the reason to repair something that's not really broken? But ultimately, I do want at some point to look at the timing chain. So we'll want to take the timing cover off. And then once you're in there, you might as well buy a timing chain and all that, since you're already in there. And, you know, sometimes they wear sprockets, but this here is still a duplex chain. So I hope I'm not going to find any worn out sprockets because they're kind of pricey. The timing chain kit is pretty inexpensive. So horn is hanging. Let's take the connectors off. So horn's out of the way. Now we can take the other cover bolts loose and out. And then I guess while we have it off, I might as well give this cover a scrubbing. You can see my hands already getting black from just touching it. I just did about 800-mile round trip tour to Death Valley and back. I mean, that's what round trip means, I guess. And haven't really cleaned it since. I was going to give her a wash today, but then millions of other things. You know how it goes. But I at least wanted to start on this alternator upgrade here because that helps. I mean, I have a LED headlight now, which really saves some power. Headlight is the biggest consumer because it's on all the time. So remember, you have to have the battery disconnected. If you would accidentally touch your diode board up here with your aluminum engine cover, you would probably fry it. Right, so that's off. So now you can already see the stuff. Here's the alternator, here's the diode board. So if we would want to take the timing cover off, so the engine cover off, and that next piece here, that's the timing cover. Behind this timing cover is where the timing chain lives. But we're not going to do that today. We're going to focus only on the alternator and putting some new stuff in there. So the alternator kits that are available, there are many different wattage outputs and whatnot. Here, before I tell you something wrong, let me just pull up the web page so I can at least read the numbers off the web page. Let's see here real quick. So EME in Colorado, they have a good selection of parts. They're usually a little cheaper than BMW. They have good quality parts too. So yeah, you can buy the stock output alternator. And this one here is a 280 watt alternator. And then they have an EnDuraLast III high output alternator. That's the one that I chose to install. Here, a quick little picture of that. Includes a upgraded diode board. I decided not to buy that. So they will sell you individual pieces. I have a Thunderchild updated diode board already up there with a heatsink and all that, so I figured I don't need that. And I asked them if they would sell me individual bits and pieces, and they will. So the whole kit is $455, and since I didn't buy the diode board, I also didn't buy the front cover here, the main aluminum cover that accommodates the brush holder and all that. So I didn't buy that. The only parts that I bought was the stator and the rotor. And I did actually not even need to buy the stator, because in this EnDuraLast III high output alternator kit, the part that changes this from a stock output to a high output is only the rotor. So if you have brand new stock parts and you just want to get it up to, let's see, how many watts do they claim here? So 280 watts is stock, and then high output means, does it say that here somewhere? 400 watts. To bring this up to 400 watts, the only part that's different is the rotor inside. So if everything is already brand new and you have brand new brushes and everything, and you just want to get this to high output, you can put just a rotor in there and call it a day. So like I said, will keep my diode board. I will put some new brushes in here. I will keep the front housing, and I will replace the rotor and the stator. The stator only because I'm already in there, and the stator was like $50, I think. So I didn't even pay half of the full price here, $455. I think I paid a few dollars over $200 for a rotor, for the stator, a couple brushes, and that was it. My wiring on here, I know it looks dusty and crusty, but it's really only a few years old because this bike, when I restored it, I put a brand new wiring harness in here. And as you can see, I have an electronic ignition pickup here on the front of the alternator as well, which we will have to deal with now. I will put the bike into top dead center, and then I will remove this. I just want to make it as easy for me to put it back on as possible. It will take a little bit of doing, because after you remove the pickup and this little trigger wheel here, you will have to, or I will have to re-establish proper timing, idle timing. Yeah, so this is a silent hectic electronic ignition. The ignition module here sits here on the side next to the voltage regulator. So the voltage regulator and the little ignition control module, they are mounted here on the frame on the side. I'll show you that later. Well, yeah, so we need to first set the engine to top dead center for the left side cylinder, and then maybe make a couple markings here so I remember in which orientation this little trigger wheel needs to go on, and then we can yank it off. So let's do that next. Oh, before we go there, I wanted to talk about the other one. They also have an EnDuraLast IV high output charging system, which is a 450 watt. Here's a quick picture. That's a completely different alternator. So everything gets exchanged. There are no more brushes. Even the voltage regulation is done a little differently. They also have a version that's specifically made for lithium-ion batteries. And there are also, for example, Omega charging systems. They go all the way up to 600 watts. Problem is that they use completely proprietary parts that you can only get from certain places, and they are not as readily available as stock parts. So if you take this on a tour and your rotor burns out, I can take the high output rotor out of it and put a stock rotor back in, and it's working again. If the stator burns out, I can pop a new used old grungy stator in there and it's working again. If you have one of those permanent magnet alternators and anything with that goes wrong, the voltage regulation part, you are pretty much tied to the manufacturer of that kit. And if they can't deliver parts wherever you are in the world, then you're stuck. So with this, even after the upgrade to high output, I can still put stock parts in there and it will work. And I still have a couple rotors lying around. I have a couple stators lying around. If I would go to on a trip to Alaska from here, I would definitely take a rotor, because the rotors are kind of known to be burning out. The stator, not so much. And I can always put a stock rotor back in and be back on the road. So I just took the rubber cover out here. I decided not to really focus too much on top dead center on a single specific cylinder, because in case you guys didn't know that, but the bike here is actually a waste spark system. So if you have one cylinder sparking, the other one is also sparking. So one cylinder is on compression stroke, the other one on exhaust stroke. They will both be producing a sparky spark. So now I have to get my rear wheel off the ground. You guys are completely in the way, but we'll make it work. So I'm just gonna put it in, I don't know, into some gear. So I usually just put a jack stand here in the forward part of the swing arm. No, actually it's a cross member of the frame. Push it up so that the rear wheel moves freely. And then with the engine in gear, so fifth gear is usually where I'm going for this. Now I can just bounce the wheel until so there's already the F mark. The next one is the S. And then the next one is OT, which is oberer Todpunkt. Literally translated would mean upper dead point or top dead center. So now we're at top dead center, and now we can already focus on taking stuff off here in the front. So just for you guys, this is the F mark, which is früh or early. So this would be the marking that you see when your engine is revving and it's at full advance. That's what you want to see when you're at full timing advance. Then I'm going to bump it further. There is the S mark with the line above it. And that line is the line that you want to line up with that little notch that you can see. I hope you can see that. Here's a little notch on the side, right here. That notch needs to line up with a line roughly, you know, it's not rocket science. But yeah, I actually put some white marker on my flywheel there in those spots to make it stand out a little bit more. And then the OT mark is, oh, right there. That's what the OT mark looks like with a little notch next to it. All right, that's it. Now I can see this one tooth here already has a Sharpie mark on it from Heiko. I can also see a couple scratch marks. I hope it doesn't touch. So there's supposed to be a certain distance between the wheel and the pickup. A couple scratches here. I don't know. But yeah, I can now tell that this here is the one that determines the sparkiness. I'm gonna make a couple Sharpie marks on the pickup. Let's see here, on the pickup, so that I roughly can tell where that tooth needs to go, and we're refreshing the black here as well. All right, and now next trick is a pin wrench from my angle grinder that fits surprisingly well into the trigger wheel of the, like there, see that? Maybe the other way around. Okay. Yeah, now it's loose. There you go. So that's the alternator bolt that will hold the rotor in place. I'll keep that all together with this trigger wheel. Come on. Come on out of there. Hello. So the inside of the rotor is threaded, and then the camshaft is threaded. And so you have to first unscrew it out of the crankshaft. So now I'm going to keep this. Here's a washer, just like this, so I remember how things were. Is there any more washers in here? Oh yeah, there is one more that's stuck somehow. Let's see. Yeah, those washers or those shims are used to make the rotor close enough to the pickup, but not so close that it will touch. And yeah, I wonder if maybe those scratches are from the very beginning when I installed it. So those shims, you cannot forget. Yeah, I might have used blue Loctite. Okay, that's it. All right, so that's it. Now we can take some of the wires off. You guys remember which one goes where, okay? Blue and brown. That's just hanging over here. We don't need to worry about that. The 3 here coming from the alternator going to the diode board. Actually, which one goes where doesn't matter, believe it or not. Oh yeah, and then we have that one over here that also goes to the diode board. Push that out of the way. All right, and my little trigger here. Do I need to really take it off? No. But is this going to be complicated because there is no connection here that I can disconnect? I think I'm just going to leave it on to keep it all in place. All right, and now there are 3, oh, that's the wrong size. There are 3 bolts on the outside of the front cover here, or the, whatever you want to call it, the stator cover, maybe. They should all be the same, by the way, I think. So you see that I still have the condenser installed here. My ignition system here, electronic, run by the crankshaft, allows me to actually leave the original point ignition on the camshaft in place. I didn't. The points are still there and the condenser is still there. I have taken the advance unit out of the equation because it doesn't need to be on there and spin all the time. And yeah, I just removed that down here. I don't even know if you guys can see that. Down here in the dark, I took the spinny advance unit off the end of the camshaft, and just so that it doesn't wear out the springs on that advance unit and all that. Also, the points are still in place. And if I would leave the advance unit in place, the points would constantly, first of all, be rubbing on the advance unit, the cams on the advance unit, as well as the points would be opening and closing all the time. And that's just not necessary. So if my electronic ignition would ever fail while I'm on the road, I can put the advance unit back on, reconnect 2 wires near the ignition coils, and my my conventional points ignition would be in business again. So that's why I picked this type of electronic ignition system that gets mounted on the alternator. So I have the 3 bolts off, which hold the cover here in place. So the cover here also holds the brushes, right? So now we're going to try to pull the brushes up a little bit, and then you can move the springs out of the way. So here is now suddenly brush number 1. All right, more light, that's good. So yeah, we have brush 1 already pulled out, and the little spring I just moved out of the way. And the same thing, it's a little harder to do, but you can do that on the second brush as well. So now we can pull the second brush out. These are already aftermarket brushes. They have crimped on terminals. So if I ever have to replace the brushes, I can just take this little nut off, pull the brush out, put a new one in, slot it back in, and Bob is your uncle. My wife had never heard that saying, Bob is your uncle. It's kind of funny. She grew up here. I didn't. But I guess due to my coworkers, I know a little bit more slang than my wife does, I guess. All right, so both brushes out. So now that's pretty much giving us the chance to wiggle on the stator. Look at that. Woo! I said that I want to replace the stator. I'm not so sure about it. It's working. Why would I put a brand new stator in here? Yeah, the problem I have now is that my little pickup here is still attached. So I might just take it loose. You know, I have to do timing adjustment anyways. Right? So it's 2 bolts and then my little electronic pickup comes loose. 1 and 2. And then we can let that hang there while we take a look at the, oh yeah, there's a washer on that thing. So that little bolt and a washer. For those kind of important parts, the electronic pickup here, I would recommend to maybe put a drop of Loctite. If you ever install a Silent Hectic or EnDuraLast EME, they have a fairly similar electronic ignition that also mounts on the alternator here. So if you ever install something on the alternator housing that needs to stay in place accurately, I would recommend to maybe use some Loctite. All right, so let's move over to the box real quick. Let's look at the parts. So this is an unofficial unboxing. This has nothing to do with this, obviously. What's in here? What's in here? Oh yeah, I see. These are a couple pieces to update terminals on the alternator cover. There are new brush springs. This is for the Y bolt, which is one of the connections that go to the diode board. Bolts through the cover. I can replace that. I'll just take a look at it. Maybe we don't need to. I'd rather have a few extra new parts. Here is a new grommet, which I only bought timing cover or grommet in case I ever do the timing cover. Here a set of new brushes. I will compare those to the ones that are in there. The brushes that I currently have in there are only a few thousand miles old, so we might reuse the old ones. And here is a crankshaft seal. I have already once replaced the crankshaft seal, so also just, you know, good to have. Here now are the parts of this EnDuraLast high output. This is a rotor, and this is really the part that makes it a high output alternator. This is brand new, not remanufactured or anything. Made in Germany by EnDuraLast. Looks fancy, shiny. And the only difference between this and the stock one is how they are wound. So this just puts out more oomph. So instead of having 20 amps available, this has, you know, 30 amps or whatever. So 400 watts, 14 volts. I could calculate that real quick for you guys. So we need to put this in. This is the taper that goes onto the crankshaft. This needs to be clean, so you want to degrease that. So let's put that over here gently. And then the other part that I also bought is the stator, which is a 105 millimeter stator. I don't even know if that's the correct one. I need a knife or something to cut that open. Just make sure you order the stator for the correct year. This is also brand new production, brand new, shiny. Looks nice, but it's absolutely like a stock stator. There's nothing different between this one here and the one that's currently ugly in here. But since this is working, there is really no reason to replace it. Am I going to? What do you guys think? It actually, the install on here, I would have to desolder those three connections here and then connect those three wires to it. Am I going to? I don't know. Stators are not known to fail. It's usually the rotor. But it's a nice piece, huh? Let's think about it. Let's take the rotor off first. All right, I'll put that back in the box here for safekeeping. They even gave me a sticker. All right, here's an alternator rotor removal. This one even is made in Germany. Are you kidding me? Yeah, the difference is it's much longer and it doesn't have the threads back here. So it only engages the threading in the rotor, but not the threading in the crankshaft. So once you thread that in, you will eventually run against the stop, like soon, like very soon. And then you just grab a 13 millimeter wrench, I think. Let's move the precious parts over here. A 13 millimeter wrench and just, oh yeah, no, we're turning the engine again. That's great. There you go. That was it already. Now the rotor is already loose. And then you can just pull it off. Here is the seal that I already once replaced. There's no sign of any kind of leakage. Actually in here looks all pretty good still. Yeah, you definitely want to clean this off. Make sure you don't have any schmutz on there. For comparison's sake, they are identical in dimension, identical in look, just wired differently. So we're just doing a little bit preliminary stuff. I still haven't decided if I want to change the stator. I mean, everyone likes shiny parts, right? Everyone likes new shiny parts. So I'm just cleaning the taper here. It's also a good idea to maybe squirt some brake clean down the thread, just a little bit. In case there is any kind of grime, dirt, whatever in the threads. Just a little cleanup in there. Yeah, the taper needs to be grease-free or else the rotor will not be held on correctly. So I think the housing here, there's really nothing needed. You know, it looks old because the bike is 50 years old, but it's fine. So like I said, the taper in here also needs to be super clean. So I'm just gonna wipe it out with a brake clean rag. They might have put some Cosmoline or some oil on the machine surfaces so they don't rust for storage. So let's put that over here for a second. So as I just mentioned, the taper, the inside and the outside here, or inside here and the outside there, needs to be completely grease-free, or else it will just not stick to each other. But then on the other hand, this surface here will actually interface with that oil seal, and there needs to be a little bit of some oil on there. Some people put oil on it. I rather put grease on it because it doesn't run off and stays in place. So I'm just going to use some silicone grease, just a light smear around it. So when I now insert the new rotor here, push it over the taper and into the seal, that it kind of slips into position without damaging the seal. I have decided to install the new stator. I might as well. So the brushes, all that, I might. So if we take a quick gander here at the brushes, they are almost as long as the new ones. There's no reason to replace them. The springs are not worn. The springs were also just replaced when I installed those. So the only thing that we're going to do here now is take the 3 connections loose here. This is my little Pine-Sil, which is a battery-powered or USB-powered soldering iron. We're going to put some flux on here. Some flux. Okay. And Pine-Sil, battery powered, currently off of a DeWalt battery. Let's see. I don't know if this has a slot up here or is it just a hole. Maybe we have to crank the temp up a little more. Dogs barking. It's not slipping. Oh, here we go. First one's loose. Leaded. I guarantee it's leaded solder from 50 years ago. Yeah. We have to put all those bolts that hold it in place. Put it back in here. Just hold this terminal in place. Once again. Oh, there you go. There you go. There you go. And now we need to take that one off. That's the Y post. There's a Y cast into the housing here. Let's see if we can get that off. What size is that, an 8 or a 10? An 8. It's an 8. 8. Yeah, so that is the terminal that I have replacement parts for. If I can get it off. Oh, here we go. Yeah, nuts coming loose. They can be corroded in place. The insulators that insulate this terminal from the housing, they might be, you know, deteriorating. So now we have to just make sure we don't mix anything up. Yeah, this goes just straight out. And that's already it, I think. And now the stator should come out of here. If I'm not completely mistaken, we might have to bend all 3 wires here completely straight. Yeah. So there is a flat corner here, and you just go in there and pry it apart. Kind of like that. So and then it's loose, and then you just need to get the wires through the holes. I'm gonna look up just to verify if it really doesn't make any difference which wire goes to which terminal. I think that's what I remember. So here now we have the housing in our hands. Here is the old, and here is the new. And of course, new looks much nicer. This is all just dust, really. So here you have that ring terminal, and here you have the 3 wires. This looks a little different here. They all emerge from the same location. Here it's 3 different locations, but it really doesn't make any difference. Okay, I'm gonna put this out of harm's way. So now we kind of have to gently bring those up here, like that. And this one also. So now we can contemplate whether or not I want to replace this. And knowing that this is really old, I think we will. So we just take, there's another nut. There's another nut that we take loose, or not. It's literally a bolt that is enclosed in some sort of insulator material, so it doesn't touch the housing. And this insulator material, who knows what that is? Asbestos, who knows? Here's a washer, a nut, and then pretty much, as you can see here, there's some sort of insulator, an insulator in there, multi-layer, and just stuck through the housing. And that can wear out, and then you can get a short circuit. And I figured, where do we have it? Here's the Y post. That's the same thing, just all brand new. And we're gonna use the new stuff here. Holding the 8mm down there. My favorite Knipex adjustable wrench here. Yeah. That's coming loose. So move that over a little bit and that out of the way. Everything here is replaceable. This casting really doesn't wear out. This could have been replaced. Even the brush holder can be replaced. You can buy that in individual bits and pieces, and it's really not difficult to put new parts in there. So instead of always buying everything brand new, you can just refurbish old things. So like that. So there is a bolt, a washer, this insulator piece, the insulator sleeve. That goes through here, like so. You can see that sticking out. Then insulator washer, another insulator washer, then the first nut. And then, of course, we have to tighten that a little bit, like that, just a little bit. Hold on, one click up. Just snug it up, snuggaroo, so that it doesn't wiggle around. That looks good. And then we have this spade terminal, and if I'm not completely mistaken, it was kind of pointing that direction. We can correct that later. And then another nut. Yeah, somewhere, let me see. Yeah, somewhere, brush sits up here, somewhere that direction. That can be moved later, no big deal. So, and now that ring terminal needs to come through here, and these three need to come through here. Like so. And then there is some sort of magic here. So that bolt needs to be there, and that needs to be there. I'm still massaging all the wires so that they will fall in place. And we have the screw holes lined up with the bolt hole, the slots lined up with the bolt holes. Pretty tricky, but I think that's how it is here. That looks good. So this then flops over and goes on here. And those three, the insulator that's on here, that's no big deal. You just shove it down as far as you can. Yep, that looks good. That's just protecting it against the rubbing of the housing here. Terminals are still, I mean the brushes are still flopping in the breeze here. So that looks pretty good. That's interesting. The terminal, the ring terminal they have here is too tight for the bolt. Not much too tight, but like a little bit. Huh. Isn't that interesting? It fits. It just needed a little bit of persuasion. So then that thing again, I would say in that order, it's pretty good. Yikes. Or maybe the terminal on top of the brass piece. I don't remember what I just took off. Like that. And then the washer. You guys tell me. I just watched the video that we recorded here. So it's actually how I had it the first time around. The terminal at the bottom, then this brass piece, and then the brand new nut. I also just noticed that this brass terminal here is shaped completely differently. Much taller. I hope that's not going to cause any problems, but we're going to see about that. For now, I'm going to leave it. I like new part. Not necessary to replace everything all the time, but yeah, we'll see if that gets in the way. I'll put the old one back on, clean up the old one. That's nickel plated. This one is bare brass. The old one here, that's probably also brass that has some nickel on it. Okay, so let's tighten this up. And like I said, there's a lock washer under there, so this shouldn't come loose by itself, and we don't want to over tighten this either. So then, now I have to look up whether or not this actually matters, which wire goes where. I don't think so, but I don't know so I better verify that. And then I will also probably remove all the old solder so we can actually stick the wires through the terminal and then solder it. All right, guys. It's a few hours later. Had to take care of a few other things. We were in the process of putting the new stator together with the old housing here. And that is actually all working out pretty well. As you guys can see, this fits. It just needs to be pulled together with the bolts and all, I think. I'm making sure that I'm not breaking any of the wires, these here or this one. And yeah, the stator needs to slide in here. It's a little, it doesn't want to go in, really. I don't know why. Oh, I see what's going on here. That's weird. So there is a zip tie, holds this cable, and right there is the bolt head for the Y screw. That's definitely not helping. So what are we going to do now? Yeah, that's great. Or not. That is dumb. Can I remove the zip tie and then move this out of the way? Is there any way that I can massage this in a way so that, no, it literally lines right up. That is dumb. What am I supposed to do now? Guys, tell me. Take this loose again? I thought we were getting to the point where I can solder this together and then, you know, that's dumb. Now I have to pull this all apart again. What the heck were they thinking? Is there any other way that we can... I guess we could. This is probably not the best to bend those wires multiple times because they're pretty stiff, but is there a way that we can maybe rotate that like a few degrees and then line up that bolt hole with that slot? I think that would be probably possible. Huh. I mean, it's still the same position, but instead of having the cable come out here, it's coming out that way now. Does that make any difference here with the zip tie? No. The zip tie is right where that makes no sense. Why would they build it that way? Yeah, that is... And then also the big plastic piece of the zip tie here. Let's look at the old one that did not have any of this. It just had more epoxy. There we go. Zip tie out. And now, is this completely ruined now, or can we get this installed without? So this is aftermarket. I wonder if that has anything to do with that. Okay. So the bolt head is now really close to the actual wires here. I wonder if now with the zip tie removed, if I can maybe move this insulation down a little bit, just a smidge. That's not good. That's not good. Yeah, now this is exposed. Okay. We just need to make sure that nothing touches that bolt down there. So maybe this will help someone else one day when they run into that same situation. But yeah, this is not good. I don't like it. I don't like it. With the zip tie removed, yeah. I wonder if I can maybe slip this down and then put a zip tie, not a zip tie, a shrink tubing over the other end here, over here, where it comes out. I think that should probably, I guess they put really heat resistant stuff on there. Let's see what I have. Is this maybe an option? This will probably shrink by itself. I don't even have to do anything about it. And this will protect the wiring against the stud down here. Now, that's really a dumb design. That definitely was better on the original, I can tell you that. So now we have to get those 3 wires. By the way, I verified that that the orientation or the order of those 3 wires is absolutely inconsequential. So you don't need to worry about which one goes to which terminal, because this little book says so. Classic boxer charging, and there is in the back, they have some wiring diagrams for different years. Here's 74 through 77, and here it even says that connecting in any order. So the 3 wires come out to this terminal block, and then the 3 wires going to the diode board in any order. So it doesn't matter in which order we're soldering that on. So this is probably the best we can make it fit, I think. And now we just need to bend this over. So we have this top end here protected with some shrink tubing. So that's good. And then that on top, that's fine. The washer. So yeah, this was not planned, but I rather do it that way than have this zip tie be completely in the way down there. And then once it's installed, those wires, they're so stiff, they are not flapping in the breeze, they're not moving. Yeah, like that. And now we have the bolt holes lined up with those channels here, there, and the last one, there and there. So that's good. Now we can focus on the soldering part. So I practiced removing the, so this is how I want it, I think. I practiced removing the old solder from the terminal on 2. So 2 are already clean. The last one we're going to do together. So I have cleaning wick, soldering wick, which is pretty much a copper braid which sucks up solder. So we just have to have a little bit of flux on the old solder here that helps it flow and all that. Then we have to have our soldering iron hot, obviously. And then once it's hot, we can start putting the wick here against it, and then the wick will soak up the solder like that. It literally soaks it in. And then once we have that, mostly then there's actually a hole in here, and we're going to use my solder sucker here. This is probably 25 years old, 30 years old, not used very often. So we're heating this up, and then once I'm sure it's hot, I'm going to suck the last little bit of solder off. Let's maybe do the other two also. And then there is actually a little hole here where those wires will hopefully fit through. Okay. All right, so that's good. And now we can grab our little needle nosies here. So again, this insulation that they have on there is to protect it from touching the housing here. That's very important. So again, I just lifted it up so that I can manipulate the insulation a little bit better. You can just pull on it and move it around. Like that. So I can reach the terminal with the wire completely protected. Okay, and now we need to see if we can stick the wire through the terminal here. I might have to snip this off, make it a little shorter. We can always cut it shorter afterwards. You know, the extra piece sticking out. Oh, this is not going through. So I guess we'll have to see if we can heat it and slide it through without burning my fingers. I'm not sure that this wire will fit through this hole. Oh yeah, here it goes. Here it goes. So a little bit more complicated than I thought it would be. No, we have to loosen that. Okay. Right, the next one here. Let's see how we can manipulate that. And snip that a little shorter. Try to stick that in. No, it takes away. Needs a little heating. So I think the wire's already tinned. So the tin with the solder on there just needs to flow a little bit. Move. Maybe a little bit of flex. Might help the situation here. There you go. Let's try it again. Oh, that's good. One. There you go. So this one's loose. This one's already soldered on. And no last one here. That way this is soldered. So it's sitting on the yet. Let's just I put this on this. Also sit this one in. Like that. And then we're going to try to feed that in there. Oh, a little bit. Same story again. Maybe use a flex that thing half up a little bit. Like that. Come on. I need to 90 to see. Finally, that was a little difficult. Yeah, we just got to make sure that nothing touches any metal, but that looks pretty good. I wish I would have that one, the insulation pulled up a little higher. Just a smidge higher would be nice. I think it's going to be just fine. So now I'm going to put a little bit more flux on everything. See if we can maybe push in the wires a little bit so they stay there actually. Like that. And then we're going to grab my leaded solder here. Just unroll a little bit. Take my soldering iron. Let it heat up. put a good blob of solder on the heated part. Do your kids also always have to jump around and make it sound like an elephant lives up there? Okay, that's pretty much that. And now I'm going to find a cutter that goes in there and snip off the ends. All right, guys. So, flush cutters. Snip, snip, and snip. And I brought some isopropyl alcohol, 91%. Just want to, maybe we have a little cap that we can pour it into. I just want to clean up the flux a little bit, because flux is more or less an acid that removes the oxidation of the metals that are going to be soldered together. And if you leave that on there, it can cause corrosion. You'll just wash it off and then get it all over your book. And then you can dry that off with a paper towel. Okay. So I still don't know if the heat shrink here is a good idea, but I just don't want any bare metal wire. And absolutely, we definitely had to get rid of the zip tie down there. So I'm not sure if this is going to be okay. You guys tell me in the comment section. Oh, you idiot, you should have never done that. So I'm just making sure that the two wires that are actually in this insulation here, that they are kind of out of the way and not touching the rotor by chance. And yeah, we really only have shrink tubing here on the outside. I don't know if shrink tubing is that heat resistant really, because an engine gets pretty warm and the alternator in here will also get pretty warm. So I don't know what to do, but I think we're going to leave it like this. Now we're pretty much at the point where we could reinstall this on the bike, but I think we're going to do that tomorrow. So for today, for me, there's going to be a few hours. For you, it's going to be in a few seconds.
Many hours later.
The little trick to get your brushes back in place. So you just need to get your springs. Well, a little complicated. Lift them up and lift them over the edge there on the side. Oh, yeah. This is not as easy as I thought to show. But so you lift them over the edge like that. And then you can shove the brush down and then push the spring over top of it. Yeah, lighting's pretty good, I think. One last thing that I wanted to show you. Here, the old rotor, on this step here, that back end that goes into the seal, you can actually see where the seal was running. It leaves a little bit of a mark behind. Nothing that I can feel with my fingernail, but that's pretty much where we put a little bit of silicone grease just for the insertion, so to speak, and maybe for the first startup. And then there's going to be oil circulating back there, so no big deal. So, new rotor in place. The wires we need to keep kind of out of the way. Now I'm going to grab our prepped housing with the new stator. Let me find the 3 screws. 1, 2, 3. I just want to see that we're really lined up here with those grooves. Yeah, looks good. So I think, oh yeah, and the screws also all have a wave washer on it. That kind of helps them. Oh, and one of the springs pop back into the groove. That's annoying. So as long as we can maybe keep the less accessible spring from popping into the hole, that would be great. That would be very good. The front one is relatively easy. So here we go. I know the brake line is a little in the way. Let's get the wiring out of the way. Slide this over like that, sliding. Now the stator also interfaces with the timing cover. So we were talking about the internal and external diameters of the stator here. I have my metric calipers. So that step that goes into the timing cover is 105 exactly. And the one that goes into the outer cover is 107 point, the rust built up, 107.7.6. So that's those two measurements. And in different alternator configurations, you have different openings and different sizes, so you have to make sure that you buy the correct one for your bike. I'm gonna hold it with one hand and find the first bolt and feed that through, make sure we don't have anything in the way here, like wiring. So this really wants to be in the way. Okay, let me find torque values quick. I have a few different manuals, different brands. I have a BMW shop manual, I have a Haynes and a Climbers and a couple others. Some of them are really old, from back in the 70s. This one here is the newest I have, it's the Haynes. And the nice thing about this Haynes one is wiring diagrams are in color, so you actually know what color the wire is supposed to be. All right, so after consulting many of my manuals, the biggest, fattest piece of manual here is a Climber manual. That seems to be a little older. Everything black and white, published, printed in 94, I guess. In the electrical section at the very end, they actually alternator stator bolts in inch pounds, and I have a little torque wrench in inch pounds here, 35 inch pounds. Now we just need to find a, nope. And I need an adapter too, so this fits. I just need to grab an adapter from 1/4 inch drive to 3/8. There. And then 35 inch pounds. So 12 inch pounds is 1 foot-pound. Right? Is that correct? I think so. 20. So I said 35. Here's 20, 25, 30, 35. And that's going to be interesting. I like to go to a larger bolt. I'm going to just do that here on my suspension. There's a larger bolt that I can just click real quick. I want to see what the torque wrench feels like at 35 inch pounds. How much torque that really is and how the clicking mechanism is clicking here. Yeah, it's rather underwhelming, the clicking mechanism in this torque wrench. So it's always a good idea to have a good quality torque wrench. But we're going to try with this thing here. Okay, that's the click. 35 inch pounds. That's it. I'm going to get myself a set of electronic ones that beep at you loud and clear. So we have our alternator more or less back in place. The rotor is still loose, so not tightened up. That's no big deal. We're going to stick one of the brushes in, the back one. I don't know if you guys can even see much here, but the spring is still kind of blocking half of the opening. Remember, those brushes are carbon brushes. I want to say it's actually graphite. It's actually a relatively soft material. So the whole idea is that the brushes wear, but not the commutator, the copper rings there. We just need to get it lined up with an opening. I just noticed in pictures here, in my manual, that the original brushes actually have the wire coming out the back side. So now we're pushing one of the brushes down onto the commutator, and then you just need to move the little spring back in place. And now we're going to try to weasel the front spring out of the hole one more time without breaking it. There it goes. And then we're going, and it snapped back in. It really wants to be in there, huh? Like that. There we go. It's and that also, the wire goes towards the inside because there is a channel where the wire fits. Like, go in there. Like that. Okay. And the wire, like I said, has a place to go here. And then, boop. All right, brushes back in. This is tightened down. We can probably put some of the cabling here, the wiring, back in place, just so we don't have to work around it anymore. Here's the Y post cable or wire that goes right here at the bottom of the diode board. All right, that looks all pretty good. And now we can put those three back in place. Okay. If you want to, you can use a brass brush and clean those off, or put some deoxit on it, some contact cleaner. But I think we're pretty good at the moment. So now we have to do another thing, this little pickup here. I have to take the one bolt back out that we already installed there earlier, just to hold it in place while I was soldering. Okay. Washer, well, it's a lock washer actually. And here's the second one. So now we have to bring our electronic pickup back in place here. Okay. And then the second bolt. I don't think I have a torque value for these. I don't think so. Seems like one of our 3 wire connectors here is a little in the way of the bolt. Let's see if it slides past it. Oh, actually, I think it's sliding right past it. That's good. So it's not pinching it under the bolt. All right, there's no contact, there's no touching going on. And this is really just guten tight. Wire, okay. Nothing's touching. Okay. I think that's good. So, and now I'm still kind of contemplating, debating if I need to put some Loctite here on the alternator mounting bolt. Of course, from the factory, they don't do that. But the fact is that this is now not just holding the rotor, but also has a couple shims on it and my ignition pickup here. So I'm kind of debating whether or not I should put just a tiny little drop of blue Loctite on there. And I think I will. Here's blue Loctite, 245. One little drop. I just cleaned the threads with brake clean. I just don't want anything to come loose while riding. Okay. Better. All right, I have the original shims that I took off still in here. There were 3. I will have to see if there is enough space between the pickup and my little pickup, my trigger wheel here. All right, there you go. So now we're actually screwing into the crankshaft. Here is the tooth that I marked with Sharpie. What I will have to look real quick is if we're actually still in top dead center or if I moved things around, and that's very possible. Here's my flashlight. Yeah, we're a little past. Right in there is an OT, oberer Todpunkt, as I mentioned before. Oh my goodness, there. Oberer Todpunkt. And right there on the side, you can maybe see the teeth of the flywheel, and I just reached in there with a screwdriver and moved it about a little bit, so I have the OT back in the window. So, yeah, we torqued this down. We verified one more time if our timing is roughly in the ballpark, but I do have to run it and put a timing light on it and see what it actually does. So we tightened those 3 bolts down to whatever the inch pounds were. Looks all pretty straight and lined up. Brushes are back on. All the wiring is connected. Here's the wiring loom going to the points that is still in place. So that looks all pretty good. Now I'm going to reconnect the battery. Just remember, be careful, don't touch anything up here at least. And then I'm going to try to run it, and we have to open the garage door. So let's get this going. All right, it's all hooked up. So let's see if we can get some life out of it. I just verified that in front there, the alternator, nothing is in the way. And we are in neutral. And we have a choke on. Oh, something isn't fluctuating here. What's going on? Let's see. Choke is on. What did we do? What did I do? That's not... Did we forget to hook up something? No. I did just now verify timing position of that pickup one more time. That looks pretty good, but the only part that I haven't verified is the distance between the rotor and the Hall effect sensor. And so the reason why we didn't have any sparky spark is because the gap between the pickup here and the trigger wheel is way too large. I need to look this up real quick. I still have the manual somewhere. It's supposed to be like 0.6 of a millimeter or maybe a millimeter. This is more like 3 or 4 millimeters. So we will have to take this loose one more time and put it back on with less shims or no shims at all. So let's do that. So we're not tightening this up quite yet. I need to see how close we are. So the thickest we can do is 0.8. Oh, this is way too far away. Way too far away. That's not even funny. So what are we going to do now? What am I supposed to do now? Put a shim or a washer in here under this and lift that off the case. This is at least 2 millimeters still. We need to bring it at least down to 1 millimeter or a little less than that. That's crazy. Didn't see that coming. So apparently the new rotor is a little different. Or are we not far enough in? Is it not seated all the way? Is that even possible? No, I don't think so.
Many hours later.
All right, guys, so here are my findings, and I figured I'd share this with you. So I took my caliper. Let's make sure you can see what I'm showing you here. So I took my caliper to the new rotor and to the old rotor and just compared external dimensions, right? So you can see here where the brushes usually run. this front brush is already pretty far back. So externally, all the dimensions are the same. The only thing that is, of course, very hard to measure is if the taper here on the inside is machined any different. Maybe the taper on the old one goes in a little further or whatever. So what I did is I took the old one, just make sure the taper is clean, and then I slide it on, and then I just give it a little push like that. So it's more or less in its installed position. And then my caliper would of course not be able to measure from here to a surface on the engine case, but I used a square. Where is it now? This also has a scale here in millimeters. So I just used this little combination square, lined up this flat surface here with the end of the commutator, like that, and then measured against a fixed location on the engine case. So measuring the front of the commutator to the surface there. And that is now saying we are at about 73 millimeters. 73, okay? And now we're going to wiggle this a couple times and hope that it comes off without using the removal tool. That's pretty stuck now. Yeah, that's perfect. So we just need to use the removal tool, break it loose again. This is actually how the taper holds this part on. Taper is a pretty powerful assembly method. So on a lot of machine tools, like the chuck on your drill press, they also use a taper to hold that chuck in place. And if the two surfaces, this external and the internal taper, are machined to the same tolerances, they can fuse together so that you literally can't get them apart. Sorry, nasaliness. Okay, and now we're going to do the same with this one. Just jiggle it into the seal, and then, maybe. So that's on there. And now we're going to measure the same thing. And I think I found, so lining up the front surface here on the commutator, and then our little, let's take that loose, against the same surface on the engine case, tighten this up. And this now here says we are at 1, 2, 3, like a fraction, a few tenths of a millimeter longer. So this is sticking out a little further, which then in that case means that the brush actually rides a little further back. And here on this one, you can see it is already pretty far back. So now it's going to be even further back. So there is just an ever so slight difference, a couple tenths of a millimeter, you know, maybe half a millimeter difference. No, that is stuck too. But that might already be the reason why my pickup is so far away from that installed rotor. So I will have to, you know, actually, we measured it. I can actually leave it on here. I'm not going to take it off. I might just reassemble everything and check it one more time.
Many hours later.
This was an eventful afternoon, I gotta say. So when we left off, I was at the point where the spacing between my Hall effect sensor and the little trigger wheel here was way, way, way too large. So I measured the rotor against the old rotor. I measured the dimensions of the new stator. So here in the middle is an aluminum ring. On those old ones, it was, I think it was some sort of cast, rusty steel, whatever. And from the two surfaces that interface, this interfaces the alternator housing and this interfaces the timing cover. This is 22 millimeters. And apparently on those newer aftermarket EnDuraLast alternator stators, the dimensions is only 20. So that's 2 millimeters less. So that means that this whole housing here slides in 2 millimeters closer to the timing cover. What that causes is that the brush holder is 2 millimeters further over that way. So the brushes are 2 millimeters further over on the slip rings here, on those copper contacts. And in my case, this one here was already partially off the slip ring. So really over the edge just a little bit, but you know, that would not have been good because then you are only partially wearing off the brush and then, you know. Anyways, and then also since my ignition system pickup here mounts to the housing, that was further away from the end of the rotor. The rotor is the same dimension as the original, so the EnDuraLast high output 3 rotor is the same dimension as the original. So the distance from the end of the slip rings to the timing cover, I picked a spot here, measured that, is exactly the same. So the stick out of the from the engine is the same, but the housing here slides in further because the stator is different. I made a little video, took a couple really detailed pictures and sent that over to Euromotor Electrics to let them know about it. I have had a conversation with Matt over there, and he told me that EnDuraLast is kind of the last manufacturer that actually still makes stators, and they are now all that dimension. And the only thing that you can do is space out the brush holder. So I ended up putting another fiber washer. So one side of the brush holder is grounded, this side here. This contact here is grounded to the housing, and this one is insulated. So I put another fiber washer over here and a steel washer, same dimension over here, is about a 1.5 millimeters. Pushed the whole brush holder this way. That brought the brushes over into the, not quite in the middle of it, but at least they are fully engaged with the slip rings now. And that also brought my Hall effect sensor outward a little further so that I now can actually shim this properly. So I can put shims behind here to make the distance to the pickup 0.6 to 0.8 millimeters. And I just realized that we are not shimmed correctly. I had worked on this before, but when I guess when I finally tightened it up to 25 Newton meters, it sucked it in far enough that now we're too tight. So I have to take this loose one more time, but that's no big deal. I rather do that and I'm able to push it out further than being way too far away. So yeah, all this was resolved with a conversation with Matt at Euromotor Electrics. He knew all about it. He told me, yeah, the metal ring here, the metal ring that spaces everything is now 2 millimeters narrower. I guess Euromotor Electrics uses that as an advantage because they also have a crank-driven ignition system, also by EnDuraLast, that mounts on here. And so they need the space. Now we're just going to, I just cleaned up tools because I thought I got it all, you know, figured out. Now we have to take this loose one more time. So I still have my sharpie, so we can take it loose, take it off, then take it off, then push it in there. I originally had to push it in there, now everything's this, all the dimensions will change. But I put steel washer here, and I put two steel washers behind the pickup bracket. That's very solid, so I still washer each, so now I have it close to the pickup wheel. And it's all good, it's all good, so let's not drop these. But it's one shim there, originally I said I had 3 there, so now I'm putting, actually I had 4, so now I'm putting a second little, they're actually different dimensions. I would say this is one missing one, this is one little one here, one more fingers, maybe not one, that's like, you know. Yeah, so 2 shims. So now, it is kind of tricky. You kind of have 3 hands for this. So you want to secure your final, with just rubbing into the final, and then second you have to spin this and hold the trim. So my very precise little marks there, which are telling me where that 1, 2 needs to be to trigger it, the correct, where it's going to be the middle. So let's actually do that. Okay, so flashlight moving my timing wheel here. It's still less OT. Yeah, I'm flex right now. So then we have that trim wheel. I'm going where I think it should be. Actually, what you need to do is you tighten it up. Go here. It will take clockwise. So if I tighten it up here, and I can grab that. Anyway, I just force it. Hold it right, just slide it. So now you literally need 3 hands to hold this. See now, it's going. I'm doing it. It's going to. So okay, I think this is what I'm going to do. Try to do 25 meters. Yeah, yeah, that's okay. It's moving fast. I can't hold it. I have to. It's incredible. So, wait, I'm going to. Yeah, I don't hold it and hold that. I'm going at the same time. Really help. Really help. All right, guys. So I have a helper. Now I have a third hand. My son is holding the screwdriver into the timing hole to make sure that the timing doesn't go bye-bye. Oh, hold on. Yeah, you don't pull it out. You keep it in there. Keep it in there. Hold on. I need to modify it a little bit here. Okay. Let's see. Okay, hold it like I showed you. Okay. So I'm holding the timing pickup wheel. He's holding the flywheel. And now we're going to tighten this up to 25 Newton meters. If I can. If it clicks. There you go. Okay. And the tooth is still in the black mark. And where's my flashlight? Okay, hold on. I need to see the OT mark. Yep, that looks good. Okay, you don't need to stick it in anymore. And now the only last thing is we have to make sure we have, oh yeah, this is 0.6. So it needs to be between 0.6 and 0.8. So if 0.8 doesn't, 0.8 also fits, but tight. So I think that's fine. 0.6 to 0.8. So now we should be able to actually run it. I will move you guys somewhere else and release my helper because we're done. Okay, helper, you're released. Thank you. So now we have pretty much everything ready to go here. I have my timing light hooked up to this spark plug lead, and it's powered by a separate battery. I just need to hook up the battery again. So now we have power in the bike. All the wires are connected. That one wire, yep. Now we just need to make sure that nothing is rubbing while we are running the engine open. So steering straight ahead so the brake lines don't interfere. And let's turn the power to the timing light on. And now let's turn the power, oh, we're not in neutral. We definitely need to be in neutral. There you go. Oh yeah, and I still have my jack stand under here. I might want to take that off, put the wheel on the ground. Okay, neutral, timing lights hooked up. Let's see. The tank is hooked up. Fuel and choke. Let's see. Oh, so we have a functioning ignition system. It's running. There you go, that sounds good. That's idle. And now I have my timing light flashing. And now we just need to see, oh, we are at the S mark, which is right where it needs to be. So S is spät and F is früh. Spät is late and F is früh is early. So if I now rev up, it would move to the F mark, and that would be a good indication that we have a good timing advance. Yeah, there's the F mark. So idling at the S mark, and there are a few different indications, so you can have a little bit earlier or a little bit later idle timing, but we're at least in the ballpark. Yeah, and as you can see, everything here in the front is spinning as well, so it looks good. And when I rev it up, is my charging light gonna go out, the generator light? Yes, it is, it is. So now another test that we could do is I have a multimeter here. And we could see if the alternator is actually charging. So I put it to volts. Now I have to stick it onto the battery terminal somehow. I don't know what you guys can see. So let's see what the battery voltage is. We can't do this very long because, so 12.3 is right now, and I'm revving up right up to 14.2. So it's definitely charging. Alternator is working, that's good. All right, let's turn it off just before we overheat anything. So we have decent timing, at least in the ballpark. I might manipulate this a little bit. To manipulate that, I have to change the position of that little trigger wheel. So just turn it a little bit further clockwise or a little bit counterclockwise to change the position to make the idle timing a little bit later or earlier. But yeah, we have now a 400 watt brushed alternator installed. It was a little bit more involved than what I was hoping for, but I think that is pretty promising. And for tonight, I'm definitely gonna call it quits. Yeah, looks good. I looking forward to riding it again. So let's turn off fuel here on both sides. All right, let's look around one more time. So as I mentioned before, the only high output part about this model of alternator to bring it to 400 watt output is only the rotor, and the stator is, the winding of the stator, I should say, is stock, not different from the original. So I could have left all the original stator in there, didn't have any problems with spacing and whatnot, but yeah. Now we have a new stator, a new rotor, old brushes, because I'm a cheapskate. But yeah, everything is charging. Ignition is working. I might fiddle around with it a little bit to move it, you know, so if I spin it, if I hold the crankshaft and move this trigger wheel a little bit clockwise, that means that the triggering will happen earlier. So we are moving a little bit to an earlier ignition timing, idle timing. I'm only talking about idle here, no timing advance yet. And if I spin this trigger wheel a little bit counterclockwise while I'm holding the crankshaft still, I will move to a later ignition timing, okay? And that's pretty much all there is. This is a 400 watt alternator. In case you are interested in that, I'll put some links down below. Like I said, there are other versions where you get even more output and they completely look different. They are a permanent magnet alternator and they have no brushes. The only downside is that you are tied to that company, whoever makes that. You have to source parts there. With this stator and that alternator, if that rotor fails, I can yank it out and put a stock one back in. Or if the stator fails, I can put a stock one back in. No problem. Yeah. All right, that's it.